Back in January of 2013, I left my day job to become a YouTube creator full-time, initially supported by ad revenue that I was collecting from the popularity of my videos analyzing My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. And when YouTube eventually raised its copyright bar and basically blocked all of the existing content connected to this show that had just been using the clips excessively, nobody having been blocked for it before, I immediately lost monetization. And the only reason that I was able to keep doing the job full time is that enough of my viewers cared enough about me to give me money on Patreon. This was a brand new platform. I would be willing to bet that I am one of the first people to ever have had a Patreon that was their only income. Now, I was lucky at the time because I was still living with my parents, so I didn't need a crazy amount of money. But as long as I could make $1,000 a month, I felt like I could live off of my Patreon. I was very excited when I started making minimum wage. This year, I am probably going to make, through Patreon alone, like $80,000. So I make a pretty good amount of money through this platform. Today, they kicked Mr. Metokur from the platform. Mr. Metokur is another YouTuber who had been supported through ad revenue and Patreon. He was eventually kicked from YouTube completely. His channel has been totally wiped out. A lot of his videos are re-uploaded there, but he had to turn to BitChute, create an account there, release his latest video only on BitChute, while taking advantage of the fact that BitChute would allow his much more extreme content to survive, where he could get away with posting things that wouldn't survive on YouTube. Now, personally, I've been doing that for years using Patreon. Because of the fact that I have a Patreon, I don't have to post things to YouTube. So if I want to make content that, is fair use but would definitely trip Content ID on YouTube, then I will make it on another platform and release it just to my patrons. Or if I want to make something that has, more graphic content displayed, I'll release it somewhere else and link it to my patrons. That's just the way that this thing is set up for. It's set up to allow you to make money for whatever niche thing you happen to be doing. And a big part of why you can do that is that you're not releasing anything on Patreon. I mean, you may be posting links to things, but Patreon's not hosting almost any content unless it's a podcast that you upload straight to the platform, which I have one of, and I have a ton of episodes of podcasts uploaded straight to Patreon. So I'm pretty deeply embedded into the infrastructure of this website, which is why it really concerns me when I see Mr. Metokur having his Patreon deleted for his most recent video that he posted to BitChute, which was essentially a piece of what would be YouTube content if YouTube allowed you to show sort of graphic content, which it does actually. I mean, most of what's in this video probably could be found on YouTube because YouTube really doesn't police its content with any kind of intelligence. It's pretty easy to get past its detection if you just title your videos a certain way or do certain things to it, and the only way it gets found is if somebody flags it. So tons of crazy shit survives on YouTube all the time with just not a ton of views sitting around, but being found by people nonetheless. But if you actually put it in front of an audience, most likely this video will get taken down. And that's exactly why Patreon exists. That's the whole point, is that you could post this content and still monetize it, even if you can't monetize it through YouTube. I mean, Patreon's entire existence is indebted to the fact that YouTube kicks off content. Like, I would not have ever needed to seek a platform such as Patreon were it not for the fact that my videos were being demonetized, that I literally couldn't monetize my channel for like 6 months out of the first year of me being a full-time creator. It was entirely Patreon that allowed me to keep posting videos that were getting demonetized on YouTube. So if this content is too graphic for Patreon, then I really have to wonder, where does Patreon draw its lines? Like this, I don't understand how this is too graphic. I don't understand how this content is in any way a breach of Patreon's guidelines. I understand why it couldn't survive on YouTube. It's still on BitChute. Why is Patreon not able to support this video? And so my best bet would be that it's not about the graphicness of this content. It's about the content of the message of the video. And I could see why this video would be taken as essentially anti-trans propaganda to some degree. But this video is not actually anti-trans people. It's anti-transitional surgery. It is presenting a very stark reality of what the surgery, what the procedures are, and what you sort of, end up with after having gone through transitional surgery. And this video for me was incredibly insightful and interesting, and I thought important, and something that, I was very glad somebody took the time to show me. So I'm going to explain why I feel that way. And I need you to understand that I have self-identified as a member of the trans community publicly through this channel before. I've identified as gender fluid. I have a huge trans audience, especially in the closest members of my community, the people on my Discord. I come from the My Little Pony Friendship is Magic community, which is an extremely trans-driven community on the down low. And so the reason for all of that is that, when I was a teenager, I questioned my gender identity a lot. I was open to the idea that I was bisexual as well as possibly transgendered. That term did not, was not aware. I was not aware of that term at the time, so I wouldn't have even thought of it that way. But I thought a lot about what if I could be a woman instead? And a lot of that had to do with a sort of body dysmorphia because of the fact that my body changed radically when I went through puberty. I grew up being a very small, very scrawny little kid who looks like a little girl. If you look at pictures of me, you would not assume I was a boy. No matter who you are, maybe you don't assume anybody's gender, but you would definitely not assume I was a boy. But yet, at the time, I really hated when people mistook me for a girl, and I was totally afraid of girls growing up. So I had a weird relationship with, the idea of femininity from the beginning. But when I started growing up and, growing facial hair and getting bigger and getting fat, and growing taller and no longer being the shortest kid in all my classes, I felt very differently, and it was maybe this desire to sort of go back or to look the way I used to look or something. I don't really know. I don't know exactly what was the cause of the feelings I had at the time. I just know that for a time, I really felt like I was extremely interested in the idea of transgender stuff, and especially as an anime fan, I was a huge fan of traps. And, that word has become completely a hot button topic nowadays. But at the time, it was very celebratory because it was mostly used by people who were seeking out trap characters to identify with, looking for boys who were dressed like girls because you were a boy who wanted to dress like a girl, And that was how I felt in my teen years. But eventually I came to, embrace a more masculine identity, be more proud of the, male parts of myself, I'm happy to be able to grow a cool-looking beard and have, a cool-sounding voice and, be able to make a woman feel good with my huge cock is a great feeling. So I'm pretty happy with being a guy, but it's not to say that I always 100% of the time am full on machismo, feeling like a dude. I think I probably project way more masculinity in my videos than I do in real life, mostly because of the fact that it's a sort of I'm doing public speaking. It's a very traditionally kind of masculine activity. I'm doing an orator kind of thing and trying to command your respect and attention while also telling you hey, I identify with this trans stuff, and when I see somebody making a video about trans stuff, I'm extremely interested. And this video in particular, if I had seen this when I was a teenager, would have at the very least radically shifted my perception of what it actually meant to get a gender transition. Because not only does he show the actual surgery, footage of the surgery happening, exactly what they do. And in the case of going male to female, they literally invert your penis. They take it and they flip it inside out. And that's what becomes your vagina. And when you see the results of that, you essentially realize that, like, the most realistic way to describe it, it's not that it's bad to get this surgery or that people won't feel better afterwards necessarily, that there's not ways to sort of cope with the issues of it, but you are left with non-functional parts that are facsimiles of what they would be on, you know, somebody who was born male or born female. And, like, regardless of how you perceive that, it's extremely important to know that before you have this procedure done. And people don't put it that way. People don't talk about that. People don't show the reality of that situation of, like, growing hair inside of your vagina or on the head of your dick, you know, like, which is something that happens. And I don't know if, you know, Metokur was only showing worst case scenarios. I don't know if there are better versions, but he shows in the video, like, people who have buyer's remorse over their transition, where, you know, they realize that it's even worse to have this, like, non-functional part than what they had before. And, like, not everybody's going to feel that way, but the fact that some people do is important to know if you're going to make those kinds of decisions. And so, like, to me, I saw this video as, like, extremely vital. Like, you know, granted, I don't know if this video would reach a lot of, like, the trans community because of just who Mr. Metokur is, who's associated with him, what kind of group is generally considered to be watching his videos, is maybe of a more conservative slant. I am sure there are, like, hundreds of trans people who are huge fans of Mr. Metokur. I'm sure a lot of my trans fans are also fans of Mr. Metokur. You know, maybe not the ones who are, you know, they might not go and listen to, like, his appearance on the Ralph Retort, but they're going to listen to at least his videos that were on YouTube before he got taken down. He has a lot of interesting content about a lot of different subjects. And, like, it's really, like, who is to say what is being paid for by your Patreon? You know, like, did he have it on a per video basis, and did he mark this video specifically? Does that mean that it's a Patreon supported piece? Because I release just everything. Like, I'm on a per month basis. Everything that I do, I consider to be supported by Patreon. If I go on Dick Masterson's show, if I go on the Ralph Retort, if I go on you know, if I were to do something with Mr. Metokur, like, I would be doing it because I live off of Patreon. It supports everything I do. And, you know, a lot of, again, content that can't survive on YouTube, or that, you know, it gets demonetized on YouTube, I'm able to post it because of Patreon. And I've now seen people get kicked from Patreon multiple times for saying things that I don't consider to be, you know, anything worse than what I've said in jest. You know, like, I don't know how much it matters to the people at Patreon who these people are associated with, you know, what kind of audience they have, or is it just getting complaints? Like, do they just block you if you get enough complaints, the same way that YouTube does, you know? If that's the case, then it's an incredibly shill fucking platform. And, like, look, this is Dick Masterson. Dick Masterson makes $22,000 on Patreon every month. He lives in an $850,000 house in the Hollywood Hills on a Patreon. This guy used that money, the fact that he only produces a podcast once a week. He does a bonus episode once a month. He has, you know, it's just high production value, and the audience absolutely loves it. And he's keyed into all drama going on in all parts of the community. This guy, using the fact that he has the time through Patreon, you know, has created an alternative. He created New Project 2, a fully functional alternative to Patreon that takes no fees from you except for the bank fee, which is very minimal. It's like 10 cents. And is completely 100% free speech protected. And all it really is a Patreon front page that is just a payment processor. There's no social media elements. You can't even just, like, there's not even a home page. You can't go to a page that just lists the creators who are on the platform. You just go to a person's page and you give them money and they give you shit. And that's really all Patreon needs to be, because that has always been its primary function. The only thing that has ever driven people to Patreon is creators linking to their Patreon. Nobody surfs the Patreon homepage to find people to support. Why would you do that? It's stupid. So Patreon has all these extra features that basically exist just purely because they need venture capital money. They need people in Silicon Valley to make their platform profitable, and they need to project growth. They need to constantly be having more people on the platform, be more friendly to higher levels, and to have more work for the people who work there to do on inane shit that is secondary to what we creators actually need, which is a better support pipeline. Support on Patreon has always been lackluster, and especially because your money gets tied up all the time. It's not a good payment processor. People have frequently, I've had friends who, I've talked about this for years. I've talked about all kinds of problems with Patreon. And New Project 2 has its own problems, especially in the fact that banks have kicked it off. It's had issues where, Dick at one point had to hand process everybody's payment on the platform because of a major, stopgap essentially when one bank was pulling out and another one was getting signed up. I mean, it's a platform that is, in the stages of trying to figure out how you even can have a free speech driven platform in the modern age. But his dedication to making that possible is just vastly more admirable than anything Patreon is doing. I mean, Patreon has, I have a huge audience on there. It's not easy for me to migrate these people. I have a New Project 2 page. I was one of the first people to sign up because, I say a lot of foul fucking language in my videos, and the only reason I don't get complained about is because I can pull things like the trans card or the, went to a black high school card or something. I can just say, hey, look, I speak to these experiences and I have people in these communities who vouch for me. Suddenly when it comes out of my mouth, well, if it's not from somebody you think is potentially racist or has racist fans, then it's fine, even if we're saying essentially the same thing, So, I've always been afraid that I'm gonna get kicked from Patreon, especially for making a video like this, where I'm basically, laying everything out in the open. But, I know I have fans in the Patreon office. I've been on this platform forever. I was sent a care pack by a woman who works there once, who drew an anime illustration on a card and sent me a fucking booklet and a pen, just in a blanket. Which is all completely unnecessary. I don't know why you have these things. I assume they give them out to people who come to their events. It just is a very California thing. But hey, I got some fun stuff. I appreciated it. And if that person is watching, I really hope you hear me out. That as somebody who, I don't want to see anybody getting kicked off of their platform, because I want us to hear the minority voices, and even if they are fucking psychotic, I want to know what these people are saying, what they're thinking. I want us to be able to confront ideas head on, and if people are willing to support someone for the things that they're saying, they should be allowed to do so, and that person should be allowed to live off of their charisma. Who are we to say that they're wrong? We don't know who's right or wrong. I don't want to be on a platform that's going to make moral decisions about who's allowed to make money off of their fucking crazy beliefs. I mean, I spout some insane shit on my channels, I don't know if can I get blocked for just talking about autism all the time, and just be again, am I only safe because I consider myself to be autistic? Is that the only reason that I'm safe? I don't know. But I have a new project too. I have never taken the time to actually set it up because of the fact that I have so much shit on Patreon that I don't want to have to port over to this website. And then I know that a lot of my audience sincerely would probably rather back Patreon and its decisions than to back Dick Masterson and his open free speech platform that's going to be mostly platforming people that they hate. You know, most of the people that my audience is by no means conservative, you know, and that's what a lot of the people getting kicked off these platforms appeal more to. You know, I'm not a conservative. I just think their videos are really interesting and informative and give me a look into another perspective, you know, that's really usually not that different from mine. There's usually just a couple minor differences in the way most people are looking at things, but, you know, whatever. Point being, I think just micromanaging who is allowed and not allowed on your platform is just it's a load of horse shit. It's clearly just being done to respond to complaints. You just don't want people bitching about, you don't want to have a scandal on your hands. You don't want to, you know, have a magazine article be written about how Patreon allows the funding of some transphobic or racist or something content creator. You know, even if that person is clearly not that and it's just being spun that way by the media, you just don't want that hassle. And that shows a lack of integrity. If there's one thing that this guy has and that I have, it's integrity. And, you know, I'm going to get my new project 2 set up. When I set up at the end of this month, I'm planning to change my Patreon rewards a little bit. So I'm just going to build the same reward structure into new project 2. It'll be completely, I'm not shutting my Patreon down because I know a lot of my audience will not want to go to this other website. But I really just implore Patreon to, you know, first of all, not make this have to happen. I mean, I don't think Dick would prefer to have to run new project 2. I think that if somehow Patreon was able to prove that they were going to turn over a new leaf and just do what's right for creators instead of what's right for themselves, then they, you know, which, why the fuck would they do that? Well, Dick's doing it just because he makes enough money and he has the principle. So, and it's not hard to do, you know. Clearly, if he could do it by himself, Patreon does not need any but one employee. So, yeah. I'll let my audience make the decision about which platform they want to support me through. But I'm just very disappointed in Patreon and your decisions. Bring back Mr. Metokur.